Look at your arm. Somewhere in your life, one of the bones inside your body will probably break. And when it does, the routine is so familiar, it's almost boring. An x-ray, a cast, a bottle of pills, 6 weeks of mild annoyance, and then you're whole again. You'll complain about the itch, but for more than 2 million years, every single one of your ancestors faced that exact same moment, a snapped bone, with no doctor, no cast, no painkiller, and no hospital. Just raw pain, a body that wouldn't stop screaming for weeks, and a wilderness that punishes weakness with death. So how did they not just survive a broken bone, but heal from it so completely that we can still hold their mended skeletons in our hands? 40,000 years later, the answer is not what you think. And once you see it, you will never look at your own body or the people around you the same way again. Let's start with what a broken bone actually meant back then. Picture it. You're hunting on open ground. One wrong step, a fall, the crack of bone, and your thigh bone, the strongest bone in your body, snaps in two. There is no anesthetic, no morphine, nothing to dull a pain so total it can stop a heart. The broken ends grind together with every movement. You cannot walk, you cannot stand, you cannot run from anything that wants to eat you. In the wild, this is a death sentence. A wild animal that breaks a leg this badly is dead within days. It can't follow the herd to water, it can't escape what's hunting it, and it doesn't get a second chance. For almost every creature that has ever lived, a serious fracture is simply the end. The popular image of your ancestors says the same thing. Brutish cave people, every man for himself. The weak, the slow, the injured, left behind in the dirt to die so the strong could move on. Survival of the fittest, red in tooth and claw. But the bones tell a completely different story, a story of healers. Here is the first thing archaeology got wrong about your ancestors. When you examine ancient human skeletons, tens of thousands of them from every corner of the planet, you find broken bones everywhere. That part isn't surprising. Life was violent and hard. What's surprising is how many of those breaks healed, and how they healed. They didn't heal at random, crooked, and useless. Again and again, they healed straight, aligned, set back into the right position before they fused. Stop and think about what that requires. To set a broken bone, someone has to grip the limb and pull hard, dragging the shattered ends back into alignment while the injured person is fully awake and in unimaginable pain. Then it has to be held there, perfectly still, for weeks. That is not luck. That is not instinct. That is a technique, knowledge of how the body works, passed from hand to hand, generation after generation, long before anyone could write a single word down. But it goes much further than just setting the bone, because next they learned to lock it in place. In Egypt, archaeologists uncovered bodies more than 4,000 years old still wearing their splints, strips of wood and bark, carefully padded with linen, bound tight around a broken arm to hold it steady while it knit. These are among the oldest splints ever found, and the design is almost unsettlingly familiar. Strip away the materials and look at the principle. Realign the break, immobilize it, support it, then let the body heal itself. That is exactly what a modern cast does for you today. Your ancestors used bark and linen. Your doctor uses fiberglass and padding. The materials were different. The physics were identical. Now here's where it gets extraordinary, because they didn't just do this medicine. They studied it. They wrote it down. The Edwin Smith Papyrus is an Egyptian medical text, copied around 3,500 years ago from a document far older still. It is the oldest known surgical writing on Earth, and it reads nothing like magic or superstition. It reads like a textbook. Inside are 48 individual medical cases, most of them injuries, broken noses, fractured collarbones, dislocated jaws, crushed skulls. And for each one, the ancient author lays out the same calm clinical process: the examination, the diagnosis, the treatment. It describes how to push a dislocated jaw back into place by pressing down on the back teeth. It explains how to manage a fracture, and most chilling of all, for each case, it gives a verdict. An ailment I will treat, an ailment I will fight. Or, coldly and honestly, an ailment not to be treated. These healers knew their limits. They knew which injuries they could save a person from and which ones they couldn't. Let that sink in. Thousands of years before X-rays, before germ theory, before a single hospital existed anywhere on Earth, human beings were examining the wounded, diagnosing them, predicting their odds, and treating them, and writing it all down so the next healer would know what to do. And they reached for the medicine cabinet too. Willow bark, chewed to dull the pain, carrying the very same chemical your body recognizes today as aspirin. Comfrey, a plant so trusted for mending fractures that for thousands of years people simply called it knit bone, packed around the injury to speed the healing. The materials were primitive. The thinking was not. But the most astonishing proof of all isn't a tool or a splint or a papyrus. It's a single skeleton. In a cave in the mountains of northern Iraq, archaeologists found the remains of a Neanderthal man we now call Shanidar one. He died around 45,000 years ago, and his body was a catalog of catastrophe. His right arm was withered and useless, likely lost at the elbow. A massive blow to the left side of his head had probably left him blind in one eye. Growths in his ears suggest he was partly deaf. His legs and feet carried old, healed fractures. By every brutal law of the wild, this man should have been dead before he reached middle age. Half-deaf, blind on one side, one-armed, unable to hunt, unable to fend for himself, unable to even see an attack coming. He was the definition of the weak link that gets left behind. And yet, the bones show years of healing. Years. He was broken again and again, and every single time he lived, which means something kept him alive. Something fed him. Something carried him. Something stood guard over a blind, deaf, one-armed man through the deadliest landscape on Earth. Not for days, not for weeks, but for years. That something was other people. And this is the part most documentaries skip entirely. Go back to that broken femur, the thigh bone we started with. It takes around 6 weeks to heal. 6 weeks. For a wild animal, 6 weeks is an eternity it does not get. It can't move, can't feed, can't flee. It dies. Every time. So when we find an ancient human with a fully healed femur, we are not just looking at a bone that mended. We are looking at 6 weeks, minimum, in which somebody else did everything. Somebody carried that person out of danger. Somebody brought them food and water, day after day after day. Somebody gave up their own share, took on the extra burden, and stayed. When walking away would have been so much easier and so much safer. There's a story often told about the anthropologist Margaret Mead, and whether or not she really said it, the truth inside it is real. A student is supposed to have asked her what she considered the very first sign of human civilization. Not a tool, not a pot, not fire. A healed femur, because in the animal kingdom, a broken leg is the end of the story. A femur that healed is physical proof that someone refused to let it be the end, that they chose to stay and feed and carry and protect another human being through the most helpless weeks of their life. That choice is older than cities, older than farming, older than writing, older even than our own species. And it is the foundation that every single thing we've ever built was raised upon. We like to believe modern medicine invented trauma care, that we cracked the code of healing the human body. But strip a modern emergency room down to its core, and what is it actually doing when a bone breaks? It realigns the fracture. It immobilizes it. It supports the body and manages the pain while the patient heals. And it keeps that person safe and fed and cared for until they can stand on their own again. That is not a modern invention. That is the oldest human instinct there is. We didn't discover it. We inherited it, and then spent thousands of years rediscovering, with machines and science, what our ancestors already knew in their hands and their hearts. So go back to your arm. The next time a bone breaks, yours or someone you love, and the cast goes on, and the pills kick in, and you grumble about 6 weeks of itching, remember what that cast really is. It is the latest version of a promise first kept tens of thousands of years ago in a freezing cave by someone who looked at a person who could no longer survive alone and quietly decided that they wouldn't have to. You didn't inherit medicine. You inherited the decision to care. And that, not the tools, not the fire, not the bone, is the thing that made you human.